Welcome back to my YouTube tutorial on building your computer. Today we are going to be putting things into our case and setting things up there. So by this point you should have the basic stuff on your motherboard set up. So that's going to be your CPU fan and your memory, and those need to be attached, plugged in and all good to go in order to complete this part of the tutorial. So in this episode, this is probably when things are going to get a little more complicated, but I'll try to go through slowly and stay concise and all that stuff so you do not have a hard time with this process. Now, okay, so to start off, you want to make sure you have your case. I got mine right here. Hopefully you can see that. This case works really well. It has kind of space for everything I need. I'm just trying to get some of the dust out of the fans really quickly. So hopefully you have all the stuff you need by this point, because I would not recommend doing any of this process without having all your parts already. Now I'm going to have a second camera kind of showing what's going on inside the computer so you get a little bit of a better look, especially during the more complicated bits. Do a little switch. What's up? So you notice inside your case when you have it, opened up to the bottom portion. You know it's the bottom when it has like spots for the cables and stuff. So the motherboard's gonna lay flat here. So on every motherboard, there's holes where you can plug in screws to attach them. So now not every motherboard's the same, but every case kind of accounts for that, giving different options for screw holes. So now your case should come with these little brass, or maybe they'd be silver, but you can change their location in regards to your case and your motherboard to make sure the holes line up. So I'm going to go through that process now and just kind of, make sure all the holes are done, and I'll show you a video once I'm done with all that. Okay, what's up, other camera? Now we're going to be repositioning stuff on the motherboard. So after I show that video, you want to take your motherboard, this is the back of it, and you're going to want to line up those screw holes, those empty screw holes, with the back of your case. And now there only should be only so many options. So once you line up where your motherboard should be, you can figure out what holes you need to set up. So I'm going to go do that now, and I will commentate throughout this whole process. With some cases, you're going to have a back plate. Oh shoot. I had something in here from last time. I got a little DVD thing. We'll save this bad boy for later. This is going to be useful for setting up Windows because I prefer to, get a disk version of it, but that's important to hold on to. Okay. On my case, there's a back portion that can come off, and you can kind of see where the screws are, and you can do some cable management. So I really like that case because of this. Not every case has it, but every case is going to have the ability to be able to remap the screws on where you can put in your motherboard. So my last motherboard that was in here didn't really line up the same way this did, so it's going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to have to make some adjustments. So I recommend doing this on a table just because it, saves your back from so much stress. Some important tools that I suggest you have, maybe some pliers if there's any tough screws that you need to get out, and a screwdriver just isn't really cutting it, it might be useful. Because again, things are supposed to be attached pretty strongly within a computer. And then you also are definitely going to want to have a screwdriver in here. And those are the main tools that I'd highly, highly recommend. Okay. You're not going to need a hammer. Don't use a hammer. So really, again, theme of these videos have been stability. You want to make sure your parts are all stable and not moving, because there's already so many moving bits in a computer, from the fans to all the cables you have, because once you put the power supply in, there's going to be a lot of cables. So you want to make sure during this step you are very organized and make sure that you have everything laid out all nicely. So I do. Okay, let me take this bad boy out. Your case is gonna come with one of these metal grits, which is often forgotten about during computer building, but I'm gonna make sure to remind you so you don't forget it. It's really an aesthetic thing, but it kind of, it protects your motherboard from incoming dust, and it makes things look a little more coherent. So a lot of people seem to forget it. I have plenty of times before, but it's something that is going to be not like crucial. It's not like thermal paste where you like need it or else something goes wrong, but it's something that I still highly recommend. So at this point, you want to have screws in the 4 corners, plus any other things that you think would be stable. So you want to make sure that you can see that brass underneath it. So once you're at that point, go get your screws. Now in computer building, there's going to be 2 major screws. You're going to have your thumb screws. Your thumb screws, which are, they're pretty big and you can screw them with your fingers. This is going to be really useful for, putting your cover back on your case so you can easily remove it, or, putting in your hard drives or something like that. And then you're going to have these much smaller screws that are, just traditional screws really. And these are what you're going to want to be using to, kind of connect everything. Also, have a large table to work with. Like, don't make all your stuff super crammed or anything. Okay, so that should go in this way, right? It should just pop in. So you're going to want to pop that metal thing in to your case. And then next you can put into your motherboard. So this is just going to make the back of your board a little more organized and a little, kind of lessen the empty space back there. So you want to put in your motherboard, and it should have resting spots because of the screws you just applied. So here is what the metal cover should look like. And then in your computer, your motherboard should just be lined up with the screws you just put in. So it shouldn't be too hard of a process. So take your thinner screws, not your thumb screws, and really just, throw your screws in. And you want to be careful with this because you don't want to make sure you're touching everything with your... This stuff all needs to be done kind of in the next kind of steps, like your graphics card and Wi-Fi chips and all that stuff. Your motherboard needs to be inside the case because they get connected to the case, So like the outputs from your graphics card need to be connected from, the output ports on your case. So that's why you got to do this. Why you got to put the motherboard in first. Of course, you can test if things fit. But okay. So everything seems to be screwed in. I'm gonna do a little. This is what your thing should look like kind of video. Okay, so this is what your thing should look like. You should have a screw in each major corner, and it should not be able to move much. It should be very stable. So if you move it around, it should not have any press. It should be a very stable object. And that's kind of what you want right now. So hopefully yours is going smoothly. If not, work at it. You got this. Now, let's get on to putting in our graphics card. This part's fun. Now, in my case, you want to have a graphics card. In anybody's case, I got the Radeon Sapphire RX 480, which has been a good graphics card for me, at least. I got it from Micro Center. It served me well. It's a really great graphics card, and it's cheap. And I like getting the name brand ones, like AMD, getting one from AMD or NVIDIA. I recommend that. If you don't, it's cool. But if you do, you get a lot of driver support, and it works out nicely. So now putting this guy in is not too hard of a process. So basically, inside of your motherboard, you're gonna have this kind of port that looks similar to the RAM slot, but not exactly. And it's gonna be facing one of the outdoor kind of slots from your computer. So these HDMI and whatever kind of video outputs are gonna be facing here, so you can plug stuff in. Now this is really a simple little line up and push, very similar to the RAM. So you just gotta line up the slots because you're gonna have one small line and one longer line. So it's really just a matter of putting it down, and you kind of want to put it down with these tongs, these tong things. Going in first, because it's gonna be very important to making sure things are stable. So you give it a big push, and a snap is not something breaking. It is supposed to do that because on most cases there's a little lock, so your graphics card can't be pulled out. In my case, it's a little plasticky thing. So now it's in there, and a very important step is you're gonna need to attach it. So you're gonna take one of your smaller screws, and you're gonna just kind of tighten it into the case. I'm gonna take a quick little video of what it's supposed to be looking like now. So here we have the graphics card. It's put in place and it has its lock secured. That was the click we heard. Now it's gonna be attached to the case like this. So if you don't have it exactly lined up, then you might need to readjust and try again, which is completely fine. And then you have these two screw holes. So you're gonna wanna make sure they're both in and they're both stable. Got plenty of video. So you kind of just do some more screwing. Make sure these are tight, because again, you don't want loose parts. Because powering a bunch of, move around parts. My advice for this part is don't screw it in so much where you strip the screws so you can't make adjustments later on, but you do tighten enough so there isn't a lot of give. Because I've had to run into a lot of problems where I've accidentally tightened screws too much to the point where I can't unscrew them. And then it's just a whole nother thing. Because then you want to change your hard drive. Well, too late, you can't. So this video is going to cover, everything putting in. The next video is going to be wiring. So I'm going to also put in the hard drives and stuff this video. But here is a Wi-Fi chip I bought from Intel. It was like 20 bucks. And it also has Bluetooth on it. It's very small. And I think I linked it in my budgeting video. So if you got it, then hopefully it works out pretty well. So what you're going to want to do with this is, in a similar fashion to the graphics card, there's also going to be a port on the same side as the graphics card. So on this motherboard, it's right here, right next to it. It's much smaller than the graphics card slot, and there might be, in my case, I think I only have one of them, because you don't really need two Wi-Fi cards. But you can place that down right here and line it up with the exit. So it's the same process again, where you kind of push in this thing first. Everything should line up. And you push it down, make sure it locks in. Now this one isn't going to have a fun snap. It's really just going to be a locked in or a not locked in kind of situation. If you have a Bluetooth cable included on your Wi-Fi card, you're going to have this little black looking square, and it should be labeled with D- and D+. So at the front of your motherboard, if you're facing it with the graphics card off to your left, then you're going to have some USBs at the bottom of your thing. They're not like going to be regular USB ports, but they're going to be labeled USB. And these are going to be things that are accessible by USB ports on your computer. So now this D- D+ needs to be plugged into the front row. And I'll show what you mean right now, because of course visuals help. So at the front of your motherboard, you have these 4 USB slots. Now it's not going to be 4 for everybody, but for me that's kind of the case. So I'm going to take this D-, D+. This is for the Bluetooth. And I'm going to plug it into the front row of one of these ports. Now, it should be like 5 on the back, 4 on the front. So it should fit in nicely. So this is going to be able to let you use Bluetooth on your computer, which again, not everybody needs, but it's just like one of those little things that I kind of like to have. Whether it be using, Bluetooth headphones or a Bluetooth speaker, it can make your experience a little nicer. So if your chip doesn't have it, it's fine, but to set it up, that's how it's done, because it can be a little confusing. Now you want to make sure if you have any long wires at this point, you kind of want to tuck them, because there's going to be a lot more wires after this step, and you want to make sure you're organized. So from here, we're going to move on to setting up the rest of the physical items we need to put into our computer, and then we'll move on to wiring in the next video. So the major thing we have left to do, besides the power supply, which is a big thing, is your hard drive. So this is the hard drive I got. It's a Seagate Desktop SSHD. I'm a big fan of solid states hard drives because they're cheaper than solid states, but a little more fast than hard drives. It's just my personal preference because they can be really expensive. Hard drives, getting a lot of storage, is expensive. So now I'm going to, before I start into that, I'm going to put my back case on. Actually, no, I'm not going to put my back case on. So when you do this part of building a computer, standing it upright is not a bad idea. At this point, everything should be stable and nothing should be falling out, because this is probably the orientation we're going to keep it at. This is the front of my computer. We have the power buttons. This is where my DVD player is going to go, which again, I really only use for downloading Windows. I just want to make sure it's kind of dust free, you know? Did I just make it dustier? Maybe. So on your, this thing is kind of specific to whatever kind of, you know, to whatever kind of, you know, case you have. But no matter what, a case is going to have a slot for some form of hard drive, DVD drive, you know, most of them account for all that. So I'm going to take a little video with my phone about what exactly that should look like. So in my case, this is, you know, they have a spot for the DVD drive right up there. And then down here is, you know, kind of the allotted storage space for hard drives. So, so within your allotted space for a hard drive, you're going to want to, you know, first of all, you want to move out any wires you might have, because these are going to be all connected in the next video. Then you're going to want to take your hard drive, and you're going to want to make sure that any ports on it are facing away from you, and you're just going to slide it. In my case, it's like a slide, it's like a tray, and you just slide it right onto the tray, and there you go. Now, of course, it's not done yet. The next step includes taking screws. In this case, I'm going to be using thumb screws, just in case, you know, I want to switch out storage. And there should be, if you don't get it right the first time, there needs to be some way for you to, you know, actually screw in your device. Okay, so you need to line up the screws. So in this case, my hard drive is going to stick out a little bit, which is good for cable management, and it's not going to be completely pressed against the front. So now that the holes are kind of, you know, lined up, I can take the thumb screws and just screw them in. So this is going to be true for any hard drive or any, you know, physical moving part, because they need a lot more space. With solid state drives, if you bought one, they need a lot less space, and they don't need to be physically mounted because there's no mechanical parts inside of them. So I'm flipping my case around. This is the back side. It gives me a lot of space for cable management. I think I said that earlier. But it's just I'm securing the hard drive from the back now. So kind of... I'm going to put the camera away now, but that's kind of what I'm doing. What up? I'm back here. Just building a big... You can get a nice look on the inside. Not really. But you kind of want to make sure your hard drive is secure. You know what I'm saying? So if you have a bunch of moving parts in your computer, then you want to make sure everything is specially tied down. But, you know, like screwed down, because we're not tying anything down, okay? Okay, so my hard drive is all inserted completely. It is not moving at all. And we are ready to move on to the DVD drive. Now again, I feel like most people didn't even buy one. I just have a bunch of them laying around my house for who knows why. But they're big and they're bulky, but they don't make any noise, and it's not like they hurt to put in. Look at that. Look how nicely that just went in. Look at that. That was so good. You want to make sure it's flush. The screws should line up, and then again, take your thumb screws and just, you know, secure it. I'm going to be putting I am going to put a checklist into the link in the description. First link, and it's just going to be step-by-step of everything I say, but in bullet form, so, you know, you don't have to watch a video while you work. You can, you know, print it out, keep it up on your phone, just make sure you've done every step, because following a video is good to do, and then following a checklist, doing the two at the same time might be a little difficult, so I'm going to put those checklists out there. There's going to be the one from last video, which is a continuation, which is all about setting up your GPU and your Wi-Fi card. And then I'll be making a second about setting up, you know, hard drives and stuff. So thanks for watching this tutorial about setting up the motherboard, part 2 within the computer, plus setting up, you know, your hard drives and any disk drives that you kind of want to put in. You know, hopefully you're at a good spot right now and everything seems to be attached correctly. Because in the next video is going to be wiring, which is where you put in the PSU and you have to attach all the cables to everything. And if you're not organized at this step, the next step is going to be a lot harder. So make sure you've kind of, you know, had this step really done. Everything's really secure, and you'll be ready for next episode. Thanks for watching, and bye.